Good morning. Good morning, class. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. This morning, we shall be discussing indices of food plant sanitation. And this is actually the last module in the course. But I decided to skip to this topic and also discuss food preservation after indices of plant sanitation. Mrs. Colade will be coming in next week to take you our own part. Then I pray that the lockdown will be over soon so that we can continue with the physical class. I'm still going to run through everything we have discussed virtually so that people that have been absent in the class and if you have one or two questions to ask, to be easy for us to trash out any issues you have. So indices of food plant sanitation has to do with the things to consider when building a food factory or a food plant. The type of building in which food products are manufactured and the level of hygiene have a major influence on the microbiological quality of the products. Last week, I gave you reasons why we need to determine the microbiological quality of a food product. So where you are producing that food, you also need to take cognizance of so many things combined. A food manufacturer should build specification for the purpose of food production, but sorry, but in weak economic countries such as the underdeveloped countries such as ours, rarely happens, and most times an existing building has to be modified if care is not taken. Even though a little extra money might be spent to adapt the building, the final outcome is that the unit is appropriate for food processing. And that's exactly what happens even in private schools. Most buildings are converted to 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 schools, just to serve the purpose, of which, because of course they don't have the resources, you know, to follow specification. So they just make do with what is available. So the first thing to consider is the site. That's the location of the building. So most times this location is ignored, but this is a very important parameter to consider. The site should be on a clear ground, away from bush, which is source of which is sources of insects, rodents, and bad odor, smell. Now, it should have a good supply of potable water and electricity, a good road for the access, a good road access for bringing in raw materials and sending out the finished products is also very important. Other factors that should be considered include access to the raw material, nearness to markets, after you have finished producing your products. If it's very far to the market, there's going to be a major problem, you know, in transporting. So you will need to now add the cost of transportation to your product. And if there's another company producing that, and that other company now has a close access to the market, people will prefer to buy from them, and you begin to lose customers because of the high cost of your own. Then labor must be available locally. Therefore, workers will have no problem getting to work. They will have no problem getting to work if your company is situated in Ikotu, for example, and you now source labor from Lekki, how is the laborer or the casual workers going to cope? How much are you going to pay them per day that will make it um, attractive for them to leave their far area and come? And so when you have your factory workers around, living around the factory, it saves a lot of cost. Then the site is also must be situated in a clean area without dust, without waste, without stagnant water. Most houses are built along dump sites, or probably is the dumps. I don't know. I think it's the houses that came up after the dump sites. You can imagine what's gonna happen to their groundwater and the kind of air, the quality of the air they breathe in such areas. Remember Olushosun at Ojota. There are different dump sites situated in different areas, especially in Lagos State, and it's actually an environmental pollutant to the people living around that area. Another factor to consider is the building. Now, the building should be clean and painted, both internally and externally. The surrounding of the building should have short grasses, and the plants should be maintained. I don't know how many companies do that. Most companies don't even paint the outside, not to talk of the inside of their building, because they don't even want you to know that there's a factory in that area. Now, toilet facilities should be in a separate building, but if it is not possible, there must be a closed door between the toilets and the processing area to prevent odors, insects from entering. Now, the internal wall should be painted with water-resistant paint, or it should be tiled from bottom to about 1 meter above the ground level. Then food splashes can be easily washed off when the walls and the microbial buildup on food debris. It should be easily washed off, and the microbial buildup on food debris should be prevented. Now, the right angle of where the wall meets the floor should be curved to prevent trapping of dust. These are all specifications. Now, cleaning is also easy when such edges are curved. Window edges should slope so that they do not collect dust, dirt, or old clothes that may be left by workers. The window is not for hanging your clothes. There should be a cloak room where workers change into the work clothes, and when they close, they go back there and put on their housewear. Now, the windows should be fitted with wire mesh to prevent insects and rodents from entering. Gaps on the roof are also places where rodents can enter into the building. The walls where power lines and pipes enter through are places where rats and other rodents can climb in. So food processing always require a lot of water used for cleaning, for washing, and therefore the floors must be designed to drain effectively. To do this, it is best to slope all floors to a central drainage channel, and the drain should be covered with removable gratings to allow for cleaning drains. Then drains are a favorite entry points for pests such as rats and cockroaches, and the outlet must be fitted with a removable fine mesh. Now, electric power points should be at least 0 to 0.5 meter high from the floor to keep them dry from water and food splashes. Fluorescent tubes are very good for lighting up food processing areas. However, Normal bulb should be used near machines that have fast moving parts, for brighter illumination. Now the building must be very good, must have a very good ventilation so that heat produced during food process operations such as steam can have exist. And so most of them have vacuum extractor, ventilators. The building must have a good supply of clean potable water for cleaning the equipment, for cleaning and for mixing food ingredients. So most times, municipal water supply is often unreliable, and food factors manufacturers must use their method to overcome water supply problem. Most food companies have their own borehole, and that's the best, so that you don't depend on the municipal water supply. The next thing to consider is the layout. Most times, especially in small factories, poor layout is responsible for the poor quality of the food products. So most workers bump into each other, and errors in food processing occur in this way. Two major principles to remember in the layout are that there should be smooth flow of materials around the processing room, from incoming materials to finished products. Cross-contamination should be avoided. It is very easy for sprays or splashes from unprocessed food to enter a container of products being filled after processing. So this results in contamination and wastage of food. So the layout is very important. Then the next thing to consider is sanitation and hygiene. The building and equipment must be kept clean at all times. Workers must be trained to keep the equipment clean throughout the day and to remove waste from the building as the waste accumulates. Now, the manager must design a cleaning plan as an integral part of the workflow every day, and all staff must be trained to know their responsibilities, and that's why they have cleaners in the factories. In fact, most of companies have cleaners. So it is their duty to clean the workplace every day, whether it is dirty or not. You are paid to do that. So that's their job. Time must also be given every day for effective cleaning after every food process operation. In dry processing, it is important that all dust is excluded and cleaned from old stacks or cardboards. The objective is to prevent any area where dust can collect or insects can breathe. Now, for wet processing, cleaning should involve the use of both detergents and sterilants, because detergents excuse me, detergents remove food residues but do not kill microorganisms. So sterilants like chlorine can kill microorganisms but do not remove residues. So that's the reason why you must use both of them. A very effective cleaning plan will first remove residues with a detergent and then treat the equipment with a sterilant. Chlorinated water is needed for cleaning and washing raw materials. And the required level of chlorine depends on the use. So you don't just buy one bottle of chlorine and pour it into one bucket of water. No, it depends on what you want to use the chlorine for, and that will determine the quantity of chlorine that will be added to the wash water. Now, water for cleaning requires a high level of chlorine, up to 200 parts per millions, whereas water for washing raw materials contains about 0.5 pounds per millions, to avoid giving the product a chlorine flavor. Although chlorine has a great advantage of killing a wide variety of microorganisms, don't forget that chlorine is also added to our municipal water supply. That's the last stage to disinfect the water. So, but the disadvantage of chlorine is that it corrodes equipment, especially aluminium equipment. Then it can leave flavor taints if not well rinsed afterwards with potable water. Then at high concentration, it can damage the skin the eyes or cause breathing problems. Of course, if you want to confirm that, just add chlorine to your water in the house and put your face to it, close to it, and you find this choking um, odor. Then it can actually burn your skin. Can burn your skin. So the next point under these things to consider when building a food factory is personal hygiene. This has to do with the personnel. Now, personnel handling food are a potential source of contamination to food. The risks depend on the type of food products. For instance, a food that is hot, filled, sealed, and heat treated is at a lower risk than a food such as meat pie that become handled after it is cooked. So hygiene measures are as follows. The hygiene measures to be considered are as follows. All food handlers should use clean uniform, and that's why they wear aprons. They wear overall in the production floor. All hair must be covered and hairy growth trimmed. Don't allow mustache. Fingernails should be trimmed. Hands must be sanitized with soap and water before every production section. Disposable towels are preferable for use in hand drying. Hands must always be washed after using the toilet. Smoking and spitting must never be done in processing rooms. Food must not be eaten in the processing room, including the product being produced. Of course, the fact that you work in Indomie company does not mean when you get to the office, you just enter the store and carry two sachet and you go to the kitchen to cook. No, that's stealing. It's against the ethics. So if you are producing biscuits and you are in the packing section, it is criminal for you to put that biscuit in your mouth. It is criminal. Now, straws should be provided and areas also for cleaning should be provided. Areas for changing of clothing, that's the cloak room. All workers should be allowed to handle food. Any worker suffering from diarrhea, cough, cold, or skin infection should not, under any circumstances, be allowed to handle food. So workers with boils or cuts that are infected, especially on the hands, should be removed from production. It is, however, important that workers do not get penalized for having an infection. Otherwise, they will tend to hide their problem. Such worker can be given other duties such as repair, cleaning, etc. So a good manager ensures that staff are aware of the risk that infection can pose to food that is being produced so that a worker does not feel unnecessarily punished for being ill. In Nigeria, because it's a factory work and they pay by day, for example, factory workers, because the pay is per day. So even when they are sick, they will pretend and they will come to work because they don't want to lose the money for that day. Now, if they're having an infectious disease can be transmitted through food, you see, and they are hiding their their state, that infection can actually be transmitted to the food and thereby causing a foodborne disease in the consumer. But the problem in Nigeria is that even when we know what is responsible for our running stomach or food poisoning, we don't bother to penalize because we do more of self-medication. Anyway, that brings us to the end of indices of food plant sanitation in terms of building, in terms of choosing a good site for your plants, your food plants. So the next thing we quickly want to talk about is food preservation. Why do we need to preserve our food? We store our food or preserve our food in order to slow the growth of microorganisms that may cause food spoilage or foodborne diseases. So if foods are not properly stored, they will definitely spoil. Foods are categorized generally into three. I think I've mentioned that in our previous class. Perishable foods. And these are foods that have high water activity, very short shelf life due to their potential for spoilage as a result of the growth of microorganisms in these foods. Then the semi-perishable foods, they have an intermediate water activity and they also have limited shelf life due to the potential for spoilage by the growth of microorganisms in this food. Then the third category is the non-perishable food. And this group of food have low water activity and they have extended shelf life and they are resistant to spoilage by microorganisms. But now, when this group of foods are properly stored, properly preserved, they tend to stay longer. But when the temperature or when the factors or the conditions of storage has been abused, then they become more susceptible to spoilage. And as a result, if the food is eaten, they can result in foodborne diseases. So how do we preserve our food? There are different methods of preservation. In fact, currently, the method used now in industrialized countries is what is called the huddle technology. I don't know if any company in Nigeria is using that because it's a very expensive procedure and it has to do with combination of all types of preservation techniques and it's expensive, but those foods, any food that is carried out using audio technology, it will actually stay for years. And that has to do with audio technology is broad because it comprises a food technologist, microbiologist, physicists, chemical engineers, and a host of others, to come together and design this technique. And each one of them has its own role and contribution in this method of preservation. But let's discuss the common ones here with us in Nigeria and the day-to-day type of preservation that we do in our homes. The first one is cold, the use of cold to preserve our food. And this is one of the most crucial factor affecting microbial growth, and that's the temperature. So for temperature, we talk under temperature factors that affect growth of microorganisms in food. We discussed temperature, where we grouped the microorganisms into three major groups: the saprophiles, the mesophiles, and the thermophiles. But here, you should know that we are talking about the saprophiles, the sacrotolerance. Now, a lower storage temperature results in less microbial growth and slower spoilage. However, a number of sacrotolerants, that's the cold tolerant microorganisms, can grow slowly at refrigerator temperature. That's between 3 to 5 degrees centigrade. Therefore, storage of perishable food products for a long period of time is possible only at temperature below freezing. However, because freezing and subsequent thawing alters the physical structure, freezing is not an acceptable preservation method for many fresh foods. Of course, put your fruits in the freezer, or tomatoes, bring them out after a while. What do you notice? It's no longer whole, it won't be the shape must have been the physical structure, yeah, which is part of the shape must have been distorted. It won't look that fresh again. So freezers, so freezing is not an acceptable preservation method for many fresh foods, but it is widely used for the preservation of meats and many fruits and vegetables. Freezer providing a temperature of -20 are most commonly used. Maybe you find them this type of in big stores, supermarkets. At -20, storage for weeks or months is possible. But microorganisms can still grow in packets of liquid water trapped within the frozen mass for long-term storage. Temperatures of -80, that's a temperature of solid dry ice, are necessary. So maintenance of such low temperatures is expensive and consequently is not used for routine food storage. Basically, for cold, in Nigeria, you can really not use cold to store your food for a long time. Even your freezer to store your meat and fish, except you have a very good generator, because there's no way that they won't be freezing and thawing. Once there's light, your product will freeze. And when the light is off, the product begins to thaw. So when this is done over time, freezing and thaw even cause spoilage of food, because the moment the condition is no longer favorable, the organisms will their growth will be retarded. But when the conditions are favorable, the thawing condition, then the organisms, the cyclotolerance, they will begin to grow in that food. So you only find most of these things working when you want to store food for a long time is only in developed countries. But in big stores, most of their vegetables are displayed fresh on the shelf, even though the store is full of AC. You pick whatever you want to buy from your shelf. Okay, the next type of preservation is using of prickles and acidity, using of acid and use of prickles. That's prickling and acidity. Another factor affecting microbial growth in food is pH. Just like temperature affects microbial growth in food, pH also affects microbial growth in food, and that's where under which we classify them as acidophiles, neutrophiles, and alkalinophiles. Now, foods vary somewhat in pH, but most are neutral or acidic in nature. But microorganisms differ in their ability to grow under acidic conditions. But conditions of pH 5 or less inhibit the growth of most spoilage organisms. So therefore, weak acids are often used in food preservation in a process called prickling. Vinegar is an example of a product used. A dilute acetic acid fermentation product of the acetic acid bacteria. This vinegar is produced by acetic acid bacteria. Don't forget, during growth, when I was discussing growth of microorganisms, I mentioned that um, one of the metabolic products that are secreted under log phase or stationary phase can be acid. And if it's from acetic acid bacteria, vinegar is one of these products. So it's mainly added in the prickling process. So prickling methods usually mix the vinegar with large amounts of salt or sugar to decrease water availability and further inhibit microbial growth. Of course, once the moisture content is decreased, it will retard the growth of microorganisms. So common prickled foods include peppers, meats, fish, fruits, cucumbers. You can go online to actually get more examples of pre-cooled foods. So the idea is to preserve or to elongate the shelf life of that food product. So most people use vinegar in their house to wash vegetable. So you are using it as a sterilant, but you can now use it. You can also use it as a preservative. When you open your sweet corn, your canned sweet corn, you find that the water is sweet. The sugar as is to preserve the food. Um, Hot dog is stored in salt water. When you open the can of hot dog, I'm not talking of the ones in nylon packs, the ones in can, when you test the water to be salty, all those, they are strategies of preservation, and those are classified as pre-cooled foods. The next point is drying and dehydration. We are still talking about food preservation, drying and dehydration. When you talk about drying and you talk about dehydration, it has to do with water activity. Water activity of that particular product. So the microbial cell must then complete compete with solutes for the reduced amount of free water in the environment. So in general, bacteria are poor competitors for remaining free water, but fungi are good competitors. We discussed that under water activity. In practice, this means that high concentrations of solutes, such as sugars and salts, will greatly reduce water activity, typically, and it will inhibit bacterial growth. For example, most bacteria are inhibited by a concentration of 7.5% of sodium chloride, with the exception of the gram-positive cocci, that's such as Staphylococcus or species. On the other hand, molds compete well for free water under condition of low water activity and often grow well in high sugar foods preserved by the addition of salt or sugar. Sugar is mainly in fruits. You find them in jams, jellies, and then most preserves. They are salted products are primarily meat and fish. So some meats also undergo smoking process. The preserved meat products vary widely in water activity depending on how much salt is added and how much the meat has been dried. So it's either you add water or you can dry the products. You can sun dry it, you can smoke dry it, you can microwave dry it, you can oven dry it. Anyhow you want to dry, just to make sure that you reduce or you remove the water in the product. Microbial growth in foods can also be controlled by lowering the water content by drying. I've mentioned that. Do your drying anyhow you know it is okay for you. So drying is used to preserve highly perishable foods such as meat, fish, milk, vegetables, fruits. Now, the least damaging physical method used to dry food is the process of lyophilization. That's freeze drying, in which foods are frozen and water is then removed under vacuum. Now, this method is very expensive and is used mainly for specialized applications. Microbial cells can also be lyophilized if you want to keep them for a long time. Lyophilized cells can stay for 10 years. So when you want to now use that isolate again, there's a way you are going to rejuvenate them. They still remain viable. So food products can also be lyophilized. That means you want it to stay for a very long time. And such preparations are used in military rations, during adverse conditions. So in war-torn countries, this type of food are what is uh, is keeping them, because of course they need to eat to be able to fight and you cannot advance. You cannot even go to the terrain. So foods that are taken to such places are foods that can actually stay for a very long time, and that's where lyophilized food come under. Another type of drying is spray drying, and is the process of spraying or atomizing liquids such as milk in a heated atmosphere. The atomization produces small droplets, thereby increasing the surface area to volume ratio of the liquid, promoting rapid drying without destroying the food. Now, this technology is used in the production of powdered milk containing concentrated liquid dairy products such as evaporated milk and concentrated food ingredients such as liquid flavorings. Then we move to heat, the use of heat. Heat is used to reduce the microbial load of food products or to actually sterilize it, and is especially useful in the preservation of liquids and wet foods. So pasteurization does not sterilize liquids but reduce the bacterial load of both spoilage organisms and pathogens, and significantly extend the shelf life of the liquid. So canning is another process that is used in sealed containers, either in a can or glass jar, and then it is heated. So in theory, canning should sterilize the food product, although it is not true 100% of the time. However, when properly sealed and heated, the average can of food should remain stable and unspoiled indefinitely at any temperature. But the process for commercial canning, called retort canning, employs equipment similar to an autoclave to apply steam under pressure. Now, if live microorganisms remain in a can, growth of organisms can produce extensive amounts of gas and build pressure, resulting in a bulge or, in severe cases, explosion. Now, the environment inside a can is anoxic, that's no oxygen. And some of the anaerobic bacteria that grow in canned foods are toxin producers of the genus Clostridium. So food from a bulging can should never be eaten. Check your cans. If you are buying any canned food, check for bulge. Check for rust. On the other hand, the lack of obvious gas production is not an absolute guarantee that the canned food is safe to consume. Just be careful. I know people who will not eat raw sardine. Once they open the can of sardine, they will warm it before they eat it. It's just to be on a safe side, because men looking at the can, sometimes even if it does not have bulge, does not mean it may not contain toxin producers. So the next one is aseptic food processing. Now, these are products processed that are used in United States, Asia, and Europe, where they use foods are processed and packaged aseptically under sterile conditions. And this food can actually stay for months or longer without spoilage. So aseptic processing involves flash heating or cooking foods to sterility and then packaging them in aseptic containers, usually cardboard cartons lined with food plastics. Now, liquids such as fruit juices or milk substitutes are often processed in this way. This developing technology increases product shelf life. It also indefinitely eliminates the need of refrigeration for many products. So, however, the equipment and processing plants necessary to achieve and maintain aseptic processing are very expensive. They are very expensive. So, it's not a easy method to just dabble into. have to do with industrialized countries. There's a program on African family, African magic family, the production line or how it's made. I want to encourage you to watch that program. You will see how most of these things are actually made from farm to fake. It's a very educative program. The next point is the use of chemicals, chemical preservation. And there are over 3,000 different compounds are used as food preservatives. Now, these chemicals additives are classified in the US as generally recognized as safe, and it has found wide application in food industry for enhancing or preserving texture, color, freshness of or flavor. Now, small number of these compounds are actually needed to control microbial growth. When you add overdose, well, it will retard the growth of microorganisms, but it becomes a problem to the consumer. So microbial inhibitors such as sodium propionates, sodium benzoates have been used with no evidence of human toxicity. Nitrates, ethylene oxide, propylene oxide, they are controversial food additives. Nitrate because it has been traced to be a carcinogen precursor, and propylene oxide and ethylene oxide because they have been found to be mutagens. That's they mutate the genes. So the use of spoilage retarding additives, however, significantly extend the useful shelf life of finished products. But chemical food additives contribute significantly to an increase in quantity and in the preserved quality of available food items. So it is just wise that when you are eating most of these foreign products, you have to use your brain. Have it in mind. Any spice, any product that has preservative, although the type of preservative used will actually be listed there on the label. So all you need to do is just to seek information to know what that preservative can actually do to your health. And the last point under that is irradiation. Irradiation of food with ionizing radiation is an effective method for reducing contamination by bacteria, fungi, and even insects. Now, irradiated food products receive a controlled irradiation dose. It has to be controlled. It's like going for X-ray. Anytime you go and expose yourself to that machine, the rays destroys cells in your body. And that's why if you want to go for any X-ray, the first question they will ask you as a lady is, are you pregnant? Because if you are pregnant, that rays can actually mutate some of the genes in your baby's body. So the more you are exposed to radiation, the more risk you are. Now, this dose varies considerably for each food category and for the purpose of the food. But in the United States, a consumer's product information label must be affixed to foods that are irradiated. There's a logo for it. And when you want to buy a food product and you see that logo, you will know that, okay, this food has actually been irradiated. So it's like you have quite a number of choices to make. And that's the good thing about developed countries. You are not ignorant of what you are eating. The rich people among them don't even buy all this processed food. They go for organic food. The organic foods are more expensive, but they are healthier. So it is your pocket that will determine your state of health. So the body will tell you, you will know what you are buying. This food is genetically modified. This food has been exposed to radiation. This food has been treated with this particular preservative. It's not like Nigeria that we don't even have the agencies to even monitor all these things. The composition they tell you is in the product. It's not what you have in the products. And one of the reason chemicals now, the agitation that we should not eat Maggi, we should not eat Maggi, it's because some of these things has been traced to be carcinogens. And I also tell my students, find time to visit your parents in the village. Find time to visit rural areas so that you can detoxify your body from all the environmental pollutants in Lagos and the food, the type of foods that we are eating, cabbage ripened fruits, fertilizer manufactured vegetables. They are not natural. They are not organic. So when you eat all these things, they accumulate in your system. Travel home, eat natural food, use iru, use ogiri, use dawa for your soup, and a lot of our local spices, garlic, ginger, turmeric, to make your soups. And you will see that you'll be healthy. And there's nothing as good as being natural. Go for natural products. Yes, the taste may not be the Maggi taste that we have stuck in our brain. But I tell you, over time, that okay, how come when you go to the village that your grandmother does not use Maggi to cook soup, and her soup is still tastes better than ours? This is a food for thought, my people.
Walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette.